Hi, how are you? It's such a pleasure to be here. You're off to a powerful start. It's a real privilege to be reading with such talented writers and readers. I'm going to read two very short pieces. The first is a short story that was recently published in this great literary magazine. I don't know if you know about this. I know there's a lot of writers among us. Catamaran Literary Reader. It's out of Santa Cruz. And it's a newish magazine, but they're phenomenal, so if you're looking for someone to submit to. I was thinking about the theme as well, the theme reach, and I think this story might apply in the sense that I think of this piece as kind of like a little still life, and it is a reach, I think, in the sense that any still life is a kind of a reach, in that a still life usually wants to get down to the living stuff beneath the static, stationary surface of something. So in this case, it's just two characters sitting in a room, and I don't know if it actually does what I just described, but it wants to. And all writing is a kind of wanting, I think, right? So this is called The Sky at Her Back. Mildred was dying, and she regarded as a blessing the fact that she'd had a choice in the matter. She'd observed in more than a few friends what the treatments could make of a person's last months. Better to spend the time preparing, she reasoned. All her days, Mildred had made it a practice to see the best in things. Dwight, though, would not take this easy. He would need her help getting ready. Well, what had she ever done but help the dear man? In the living room, they sat together. On the wall beside the hutch hung a set of small oils they'd found in a consignment store bin years before. That day, Dwight had decided immediately to buy them. He'd never been a shopper, but among his peculiarities was an impulsiveness which often dismayed, but more often delighted her. In one picture was a young boy. He stood in a field wearing short pants and cap. In the other, standing with the sky at her back, her hair coming a little loose in the wind, was a girl in pinafore and ankle boots. Mildred wondered, was she on a hilltop or at the sea? These pictures, modest and unremarkable, were never the stuff of conversation. No single guest had ever commented on them that Mildred could recall. Herself, she'd always found them pretty enough in their neat white frames and matting. But beyond the thought that something about the paint strokes reminded her of a Winslow Homer picture that had hung in the dining room of her girlhood home, she'd never much looked at them. How you notice and enumerate things, though, once the rooms begin to drain of time. From her chair beside Dwight's, she said, "Tell me about the boy and girl." Dwight sat very still, looking at the oils. "They fell in love," he said. "They ran away and got married. They had 3 children." Dwight always knew his own mind, even if he never did grow practiced in explanations. His first luncheon in her parents' house, Mildred's elder sister Winifred assigned the seating. Afterward, outside the front door, Dwight seized Mildred's hand. "That will never happen again." "What? Somebody putting a table between you and me?" They eloped the following month, and all their time together, as she saw it now, had been a running away. How jealously they'd guarded their days. True, this had meant some difficulties with the children once they were grown. How does one ever explain the heart's values? How tell your son and 2 daughters that you are wife and lover first, that when one is called in this way, there will never, ever be time enough for all things? "Don't you kiss," the children had shrieked when very young, and how fun it always was to defy them so that they'd groan and fuss. But always, too, Mildred had taken care to practice her attentions on the children. Never neglectful, no. She knew in her heart she'd honored the duties of motherhood. And if Dwight had been somewhat less than nurturing as a father, well, she'd taken pains to make up for that. Sundays in the park, visits to the soda shop, a dog for the children to share. "They spent their lives together," said Dwight. "Long lives, and every day of them. They got old together. Time went so fast you hardly noticed." He was crying as he talked, this lively, firm-shouldered man who'd always known his own mind. He'd known it so well, she'd been happy to surrender hers. He was noticing everything now, she saw, and it was the surprise of it that brought him to tears. His love for her, which had never been less than abundant, was becoming a kind of repentance in these last days as they sat together and viewed their lives like a picture. He'd taken no issue with her decision about the treatments. On some level, knowing he'd need her help, he knew he'd need her undrugged and lucid. But his assent was more than that. It was a small way to restore to her some freedom. These last weeks, she'd shown him some things around the house, tutored him in cooking a few simple meals, written out the names of the places his shirts came from. And they talked of women, old friends whose husbands were gone, whose ways and manners might suit him for a little while before his own time came. He'd begun to cook for her and do the washing. He cleaned the floors, the bathroom, and changed the linens. And one night last week, telling her of the pains in his back and knees, he'd actually bent and begged her forgiveness. "Whatever for, dear?" "For all the years," he answered. "All the years." Strong-minded man, he was becoming a servant now. And Mildred permitted it, knowing it would help him after. They weren't running away anymore. He merely waited with her now, and the time was hers. "Tell me about the girl," she said. "She's high up," he said, "in the mountains, higher than the clouds. And that's heaven behind her, see? See how free she is?" She closed her eyes. Breathing, she listened to him cry. "Oh, honey," she said, for not yet the last time. I'm going to read just one other really short thing here. This was written a few years ago. And I'd say this one is kind of reaching toward a boundary zone. For the last several years, I've been really inspired by a number of writers who kind of exist in these boundary zones between genres. You can't really pin them down into any single genre. So this is a little piece inspired by that. And I included this in slightly different form in my book, Partisans. It's called Interview with a Recluse. He said he loved the language of natural ruin, the wrapping of words around the space breaks in a sonnet. He understood the sadness of mountains, of rivers buried in forests, the Cartesian loneliness of maps. It overwhelmed him to consider the infinite secrecy of existence in all forms and settings, the ancient privacy of fish in a wilderness pool, or the long-winged fly of in the high whorl of a tree, the parallel kingdoms of stones, pinnacles sheathed in ice, realms of darkness underwater, even the lives of inanimate things, the dusty cup forgotten in the dead man's attic, anything duration could touch. There were skeletons in the peaks, the jungles, of men, of lions. The drowned creature's carcass bloomed algae and fed nibbling sea life. The rib cage housed the octopus. The shoulders of some birds were silver in flight. The wind at night could snap like a dark sail in its riggings. Under prairie grass and chaparral, old Indian paths still marked away. In the marble flooring of some cities were ruts sunk 3 inches deep, grooves of weighted wagons from millennia past, imperial capitals and frontier towns submerged in burnt strata. He said he'd long wanted to understand the innocence that can carry a lie, the dark lines laid down to claim ownership, identity, to create a principality and the readiness to die for it. He believed he could understand hate. The soldier came to hate at some level the comrade entrenched beside him. You hated because you wanted to love, because the prospect of loss was a ruthless constant. Nations were no different, societies. What you hated were the unnatural constructs, the country you were dying and killing for. And you hated the natural constraints, isolating desert, seas, constriction of the mother tongue and the home religion. These made love impossible. The strangulated need to love grew into hate until you believed you could love a nation, a theory, and kill for it. Time, he said, was real, but a year never truly turned. Tomorrow, perhaps, I wish, I should, I was. Age was a quality of air, death a question of soil. Glass fogged over, birds swatted and scattered, blown leaves scuttered in street and grass, and the weathered nail, bent and red, screeched when pulled for salvaging from the wood. He said we are collectors, keepers, archivists, researchers, referrers, recorders, and amanuenses. We are writing it down, always. We are writing it all down. We have not forgotten the value of transcription. Where would we be without the distillating pen? So much would flow over us, a sea forever larger than memory. To get it down, to sink one's bottle at the source, to carry some of it off for taste, those minerals, the slaking of thirst. You look at us and wonder, why do they always write? What can they do with them, those caught words? And of you we wonder, how can you let them go? Are you listening? Are you listening at all? Commit these things to the carriage of time, of revisitation. Make it material, render it up and run your fingers over, think through it again, and say to yourself, time quickens now. Whoever you are, I'm afraid we must part company. But the thing we've left, and what lasts here where we meet, and maybe beyond these edges, is the silence, tongue of our readerly mind, a living language after all. Strangers, in this we stay intimates. There is justice in paths and their crossings. How many in every crowd have we seen before and forgotten? From now on, let us look for one another.